In Module 11, we'll be covering importing data from text files, importing data from Microsoft Access, exercises and their solutions, and a final summary. So why import data into Excel? Some data held in other programs becomes static and unusable. Importing this data into Excel allows for further analysis and calculation. Almost any data can be converted to text and imported into Excel, allowing for a wide variety of different types of analysis. Finally, importing from Microsoft Access into Excel is a useful tool for sharing data with others not used to a database program. So let's begin. As you can see, I've started with an empty Excel spreadsheet. I've gone ahead and created a Word document for a fictional nightclub with the following data ranges: the month of January, the dates within January, the bands that played, the ticket price, and the attendance. If we try to copy and paste this data into Excel, it becomes completely disorganized. The cells are separated, and if the data range was any larger, it would take quite a while to put right. The solution to this problem is to use the import text function within Excel. So let's go back to the Word document to begin. There are a few methods to import our data from our Word file into Excel. The first method is to use the File tab, go to Save As, and change the file type from a Word document to a plain text document. This will open the file conversion window and gives us a preview of what our text will look like once it's opened in another text editing program. The second method is to copy our data, use the Start menu, navigate through all programs to Accessories to Notepad, and paste our data directly into it. As you can see, some of the tabs have shifted slightly, where smaller band names required more tabs to move the ticket price further along, whereas longer band names only required one. While we can make our alterations here before we import into Excel, Excel will take these differences into account. So let's go back to Excel and start importing our text. So let's start importing data into Excel. The first thing we need to do is go to the Data tab in the ribbon, select From Text from the Get External Data section, and then navigate to where our file is held. In this case, it's the desktop. Click on the file, and then click Import. The Text Import wizard opens. This window has 3 stages, and we'll go through each one. First of all, there's 2 types of data that can be imported: delimited or fixed width. Delimited data is data that's separated by tabs, spaces, or characters. In our example, our text is separated by tabs, so we'll select this option. If our text was separated by columns, we'd use the fixed width option. We can also change where our importation starts. Right now it's selected at row 1, but we can easily change this by either typing in the row we wish for or using the up and down buttons on the right. The file type is a Windows file, so we don't need to change this, but there are other options attached. Our data does have headers, so we'll check this box. A preview of what our data may look like is here on the bottom. Once we're happy, we select Next. Step 2 of the Text Import wizard is centered around the use of delimiters. Remember, delimiters are the objects between data that we use to separate them. In our case, we use tabs, and as you can see, this is selected. But almost anything can be a delimiter: semicolons, commas, spaces, or any other character, even letters and numbers. If we'd used a letter or a number as a delimiter, we can specify that by ticking the radio button and typing in the character used as the delimiter. As we use tabs, our preview specifies this below, and we can see the spaces where the tabs were used. There is an unnecessary column here, and our prices and our attendance are separated into two columns when they really should be in one. That's where this option comes in handy. Treat consecutive delimiters as one, counts all tabs or all delimiters between data as one object. Once this is ticked, watch the data preview below. Everything tidies up. Each tab between data is counted as one single tab. The third step of the text import wizard is to define what type of data is held within our columns. Each column can be selected individually and its data type changed. Our first column, for example, is date data, which we can select here. Our second column is textual, which we can select here. And the last two we'll leave as general. Our third column, which is financial, we can change once we're in Excel. Finally, with our import data, Excel wishes to know how we wish to view this data and where we'd like to put it. In our case, we want it in our existing worksheet at the absolute range of cell A1 right at the beginning. Or if we wish, we can add this to a brand new worksheet. We'll put this in this particular worksheet, and to finish we'll press OK. As we can see, our headers have appeared, the night spot, the month of January, date, band, ticket price and attendance are all within range, and all our data is defined nice and neatly within our new spreadsheet. Here we have a simple one-table database in Microsoft Access. The data stored within Microsoft Access can also be used within Excel. So let's see how that's done. Now let's try importing data from Microsoft Access into Excel. The method is very similar. We start by going to the Data tab in the ribbon and choosing From Access from the Get External Data section. It asks us to navigate to where our database is stored. In this case, it's on the desktop and it's the Book Database 1. Click Open and the Data Link Properties window is open. The Data Link Properties window has quite a few options, and some are more complicated than others. For example, the database we need to connect to may be stored online or held behind a server. The options to access it through Excel are held within this window. For our example, our database is held on the desktop of this computer, as we can see with the address line here under the data source. If our database is stored behind a password, or stored behind a computer with a password, we can access it through this option here. Once we're happy that everything's correct, we click OK. Next, the Database Initialization Information window opens in case there's anything further we need to add. The most important aspect of this window is the Open mode here on the bottom. Right now, our Open mode is Database Mode Read-Write, which means we can edit the information once it arrives into Excel. There are further options, all centered around editing and sharing the database information. Once we're happy, click OK, and finally the Import Data window opens. The Import Data window opens and asks us how we wish to view the data and where we wish to store it. For us, we require a table and we wish to store it in the existing worksheet at the absolute range of cell A1. Once we're happy, we click OK. And as you can see, our database information in Access is imported into Excel perfectly. For our first exercise, we'll try importing data from a text file. In the Module 11 folder, you'll find a notepad file called the Night Spot exercise. Import this data into Excel. So let's see how it's done. First, we select the Data tab in the ribbon and choose From Text from the Get External Data section. Navigate to the file we need and select Import. The text import wizard opens and we know that our data is delimited, so we leave this option. We also wish it to start at row 1 and we also know that our data has headers, so we select this box. We then click Next. Checking the data preview below, we can see our delimiters are not tabs like they were in the example, but percentage symbols. So we need to choose Other and then define the character. As you can see, the data preview updates immediately. We click Next again. Now we need to define the data in their columns. The first column is date data, so we select this radio button, and the second is text, so we select this radio button. We'll leave the last two columns as they are. We click Finish, and finally we choose our data to appear in our existing worksheet and click OK. As you can see, the data from the text file is perfectly imported. For the next exercise, let's try importing data from Microsoft Access into Excel. This can be a complicated process and will be covered further in later modules. To keep things simple for this exercise, in your Module 11 folder you'll find a Microsoft Access database file called Book Database 1. Import this information into Excel. Feel free to go over the demonstrations or the handouts if you need any further help. Okay, so to import data from Microsoft Access into Excel, we first go to the Data tab, choose From Access in the Get External Data section, and navigate to our file. We select our file and click Open. While there are many options here, everything else is already set up ready to go. So all we need to do here is press OK and OK again. We wish our data to be in table format in our existing worksheet, so we press OK. And it imports perfectly. Importing from Microsoft Access into Excel can be a complicated process, especially when some databases have many different users or are stored online. But we'll be covering this in further modules. And so to summarize, the benefits of being able to import data from other programs into Excel opens up a wide variety of options that previously weren't available. Data of almost any description can be imported into Excel, analyzed and calculated. The interaction between Access and Excel allows users the opportunity to use two complementary programs to analyze and visualize data in a whole new way. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next module. Some exercises and their solutions, and a final summary. So why use tables? Tables allow the sorting and filtering functions to be used more effectively than just with a worksheet. Data within tables can be rearranged to pose different questions, and sorting can tidy the data in a spreadsheet efficiently. Filtering data in a table can proficiently extract specific data from it, and subtotaling can distill data down for pinpoint precision. So to get started, we have a simple worksheet here with a range of different data series. Our title, Blue Lake Services, our employees' names, their dates of birth, their employee number, their start dates, their hourly rate of pay, and the contract type. As you can see, I've applied some conditional formatting to two of our columns, just to make things more visual when we apply our sorts or filters. To apply any conditional formatting, select the data range you need, go up to Conditional Formatting in the Home ribbon, and in my case I've used the data bars with different gradient fills. If we look at our date of birth conditional formatting, for example, you can see that the further back the date, the further back our gradient fill. So the most recent date, 1995, is completely filled within the cell. We'll be covering more about conditional formatting in the next module. There are two methods to create tables in Excel. The first method is to select our data, choose the Quick Analysis button, and go to the Tables tab, and choose the first option. As you can see, some automatic formatting may take place, but we can always get rid of this. Whenever a table is selected, the Tables Tools appears above the Design tab in the ribbon. The Table Styles has a drop-down menu that allows us to select or deselect whatever table format we wish. The first option is always No Formatting. The Table Tools will always appear if the table is selected. The second option to create a table in Excel is to go to the Insert tab and choose Table. The Create Table window appears and asks us where our data range is for our table. All we need to do is select our data, and if our data has headers, make sure this checkbox is ticked, and click OK. And again, the table appears, and again, some formatting may take place. We can choose to get rid of all our formatting, or if we want, apply a format style that suits our table or spreadsheet. The first thing you notice whenever a table is created in Excel are these drop-down buttons that appear on the headers. Each drop-down menu has two sections. The first section is based around sorting our data, and the second section is based on filtering. We'll start with sorting first. There are three methods to sort and filter data. We can either use the drop-down buttons held within the headers, the Sort and Filter button in the Home tab on the ribbon, or we can choose the Data tab and go to the Sort and Filter section there. As we're using tables, we'll stick with the drop-down buttons. The easiest type of sort to achieve, and the one most commonly used, is the Sort A to Z. This icon can be a little misleading, as it does suggest that the only type of data that can be organized is alphabetical, but this isn't the case. If we move to the drop-down menu in Date of Birth and choose the same icon, we see it's changed to Sort Oldest to Newest, and the same thing happens when we go to the hourly rate. Sort Smallest to Largest. So this type of sort organizes any data that can be arranged by size or alphabetically. So clicking on Sort A to Z in the drop-down button in the Employee column rearranges all our employee names alphabetically. In addition to this, all associated data is also updated within the table. We can always see whenever data has been sorted. Whenever a sort is applied, a tiny arrow appears embedded within the drop-down box button. If we move to the Date of Birth drop-down box and apply the same type of sort, the arrow has disappeared from the Employee button but has reappeared here in the Date of Birth. We can also reverse this type of sort by choosing the icon below it. So where we have Sort Oldest to Newest in the Date of Birth, we can sort by newest to oldest. Or we can sort by in reverse alphabetical order. And again, whenever these sorts are applied, we can always see which data has been sorted, and the remaining data is always consistently updated across the table. So those are the two most basic and most commonly used sort functions for a table of records or a spreadsheet. But what if we need something more complicated? Let's imagine that Blue Lake Services has hundreds of employees. Some of those employees may even have the same name, the same date of birth, the same start date, the same hourly rate, or the same contract type. Then we may need to do a custom sort to define our data more efficiently. How we do this is by clicking on any of the drop-down buttons and going to Sort by Color in the menu. Go to Custom Sort, and the Sort window opens. Right now our sort is based on the employees, the values held within the employees column, and the order of the sort is from Z to A. We can change this to Date of Birth, sort on the values held in the Date of Birth column, and sort by newest to oldest. We can also sort by the cell color, the font color, or the cell icon. This only really applies if we've applied any conditional formatting, as we have here and here. We'll stick with values for now. We can also add a further level to the sort by clicking on Add Level here at the top left. We can then sort by another column of data, so we can go by the start date, sort by the values, and sort by oldest to newest. We can add a further column and sort by any column of data we have available to us in our table of records. And then click OK. As you can see, our data changes to reflect these new sort values. As our data range is quite small, we won't see that much change. But in a table of hundreds of records, this can become a significant tool to help define the data we need to find. As mentioned before, we can always see which columns have been sorted by the fact they had the small arrow embedded within the button. As we just did a custom sort, we can see that the date of birth, the start date, and the contract type all have the embedded arrow. Filtering data is slightly different to sorting. When we sort our data, all we're really doing is rearranging the data in the spreadsheet or the table of records to be more easily viewed. When we filter data, what we're really doing is refining the data we wish to see, so some rows get hidden. To filter data, we have three options. We can use the filter option, which is the second part of the drop-down menu. We can use the sort and filter button in the home tab on the ribbon, or we can use the data tab and the sort and filter function that's held there. As we're working with tables of records, we'll stick to using the filter options available within the drop-down menus, but all of these options and methods are available in the other areas I showed you previously. The first thing that becomes apparent when we use one of these drop-down filters is the filter type changes depending on the data type held within the column. So in the case of employee names, which is text data, we have text filters. And we also have further options when we mouse over this area. If we go to date of birth, we have date filters, and our options appear here on the right. When we go to the hourly rate, which is numeric or currency data, we have number filters, and our options appear here. We'll return to the filter types in just a moment. Firstly, the most easiest way of using filters is clicking on the drop-down button and selecting or deselecting particular data ranges. If we click OK, the ranges disappear, but they haven't vanished. Again, much like when we sorted, a small icon is embedded within the button. In this case, it's the filter icon. If we click on this button again, we can always return our data ranges back to where they were. We can also choose to select or deselect all. And our data reappears. As no filtering has taken place, the icon that was embedded in the button has also disappeared. This applies for any type of data we wish. We can either search for the data specifically by using the search window here, or we can select and deselect individually or collectively. Where filters really become useful is in their ability to distill down data to only show that which we wish to see, and we can do this with a variety of different methods. Firstly, let's remove any employee whose name begins with S, so we'll just uncheck these two boxes here, and our table updates. Next, we'll only show those employees who were born after 1992. So again, we drop down the box, go down to the date filters, and go to after, and is after is selected, but we have other logical operators here. So we can have equal to, does not equal, is after or equal to, or is before. We want is after. And again, our table updates. Lastly, we'll only show those employees who have a contract type that's full-time. And our data is distilled down to one record. To bring back our data, all we need to do is get rid of our filters. We can either do this collectively or singly. If we wish to do this singly, all we need to do is open up the filter box and go to Clear Filter. This will clear the filter from the date of birth column only. We can do the same thing with the contract type and clear this filter. And then lastly, our last filter, the employee name, we set this to clear too. And our data returns. I'm just going to reapply the filters to show how the filters can be removed collectively. We're back down to our one record within our table. To get rid of all the filters applied, select the headers where the filter boxes are contained and just click the filter button, which is already highlighted here at the top of the ribbon. As you can see, the boxes are removed from the headers and the filters are gone. In the final section of this module, we'll be looking at subtotaling. Subtotaling is a little like sorting and filtering in that it has the best of both functions. The important thing to remember when subtotaling is it cannot be done with a table of records. To apply our subtotaling, we first need to convert our table of records to a normal range. To do this, select the table and go to the Table Tools above the Design tab in the ribbon. Then choose Convert to Range here on the left. Excel asks us if we wish to convert our table to a normal range. Just click Yes. As you can see, our headers now no longer have the sort and filter buttons applied, and no sort and filters are now applied to the table. Now that our table has been converted back to a normal range, we can now begin to apply the subtotal. Firstly, we need to sort one of our columns. We'll choose the contract type. Remember, Excel allows us a few different methods to perform the same task. So to sort this column, we may either right-click and choose Sort from the menu, choose Sort and Filter from the Home tab, or go to the Data tab and choose the sort from there. A simple A to Z sort is all that's required. As you can see, our contract type is now sorted alphabetically into three areas: the full-time, the part-time, and the temporary. We can now apply our subtotal. The subtotal is held in the Data tab here on the right. Once we click Subtotal, the subtotal window opens with its three parameters. The first parameter asks for which column to apply the subtotal. The second parameter asks for which function to use within the subtotal. As there are a variety of data types that can be used, there's a variety of functions. We'll stick with count for our example. And lastly, where we would like to view our subtotal. As we're using contract type, it makes sense to keep the contract type view there. Once we're ready, we click OK. Once the subtotal is applied, we can see the changes straight away. Firstly, it adds a subcount to each type within the contract type. So with 3 full-time contracts, we have 3 for our subcount here, the same for the part-time and the same for the temporary. It also gives us a grand total, or a grand count, in this case 8. So while we have the subcount offering how many of each different type we have, we also include the grand total. What makes a subtotal quite useful is how it's viewed. We have 3 separate tabs here in the top left, and each offer an expanded or a contracted view based on which one is selected. The first view, for example, gives us just the grand total of how many contract types there are available. The second view gives us the subcount of each contract type, including the grand total. And the third view gives us a completely expanded view, including the data held within it. This gives us the best of both worlds when it comes to sorting and filtering data. Within each view, there is also the plus and minus buttons, which allow us to expand and contract each view based on what we wish to see, to offer full versatility within the subtotal function. In the Module 12 exercise folder, you'll find a file called Blue Lake Services Exercise. Open this folder and perform the following functions. Firstly, convert our range of data to a table of records. Secondly, apply a normal A to Z sort to the employee range. And lastly, filter out any row whose employee number is above 120. So let's start by converting our data to a table of records. First, we select our data, including the headers, and we can either use the Quick Analysis button, select Tables, and choose the first option, or go to the Insert tab on the ribbon and select Table from there. Confirm that our data range is correct, check that our table has headers, and click OK. The next task was to rearrange our data into alphabetical order. We can do this by clicking on the drop-down button and selecting Sort A to Z, or selecting a cell within the range, remaining in the Home tab, and use the Sort A to Z function on the right, and select Sort A to Z here, or go to the Data tab and select Sort A to Z here. The table updates perfectly. The last task is to filter out any employee whose employee number is above 120. To do this, we have to create a custom filter. We can do this by either using the Advanced option here in the ribbon, or go to the drop-down button, choose Text Filters, and create a custom filter. We wish to show any employee whose number is less than a given value, in this case 120, and we click OK. Only 4 employees remain, so the filter has clearly worked, and we also know a filter has been applied because the filter icon is embedded here in the button. The same applies for the sort here in the employee range. So in summary, any data in Excel can be converted to a table of records. Using tables allows for greater control and refinement of the information being stored. The subtotaling function offers an efficient method of viewing this data, but remember, subtotaling doesn't work within a table of records. It only works within a normal range of data. Finally, if using formulas rely on cell referencing. The sort and filter functions can sometimes move these cell references and give incorrect values or stop working altogether. Thanks for listening.